So this is the approach leading into Raleigh's Store Machine boat. And this is one of the first levels of the game we made. And it has been gone over and over and over. And as the characters changed, as his jump length changed and jump height changed, this level got changed too.
Right.
And it's also sort of like the test bed for the lighting, right? Hokyo, you did all the lighting in the game.
Right.
What kind of stuff was going through your head when you were making this level?
Before I do any lighting, the artist, me and include other artists, we trying to get the right color palettes, get the right mood of the time. The main goal that I was trying to do for this game was not making it too dark, but you still get the sense that you're at nighttime.
Is it hard to do to kind of get a versatile set of colors going on to represent night,
Right.
but not be kind of Las Vegas-y?
Right. As you can see the game right now, you have tealish shadow all over. That is our shadow. Most of the game uses black as the shadow, but we have a different lighting that can make the shadow. We can choose the color shadow. We can make it pink, blue, whatever color, and we can give the intensity and stuff like that. So it's just a lot of time consuming just trying which shadow works the best with these textures. That was the most time consuming was with the textures. Does it works well with the blue? If it doesn't, then we slightly change the saturations or the colors of the textures. We did a lot of process on those in this level.
How many times do you reckon you went through this level and relit it?
Maybe more than 30 times.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is intense.
Yeah, because we're dealing with the fog and the shadow, and the most important thing is the brightness. If the game is too dark, everybody has a different TVs, so it might look very dark on some people's TV, and it might look very washed out, very bright. So that was very challenging for me to making it, kind of getting it right, the brightness.
You've got a really weird setup here at work where you've got your computer monitor and then 3 TVs right next to each other while you're doing your lighting. And one is a bright TV, one's a normal TV, and one's a dark TV.
Right. The reason that I have a 3 different set of TVs, I wanted to see the game with really kind of washed, bright, and also very, very dark. So my goal is trying to make it all same with those 3 different monitors, trying to get it all same brightness and the colors.
This is another one of these levels where actually the key is available right at the beginning. You can see where it is. It's a little small, but still the key is right on this ledge, very, very close to that main, that first elevator when you go in. And so you're going to end up going into the level and coming all the way back out on a different level.
Brian actually did some initial kind of level layouts for this.
Yes.
And that's what got me started in the kind of really double-deckering the game path in here.
And we did that in other places too, but this was like the first where we really did a serious double-decker, different types of kind of challenges on the top and the bottom. And
right. And Hoagie also did on the texture maps for all the NPCs. Kind of, you really unified their kind of visual style in a really good way.
The main problem for our levels, my goal is to making it not dark, but give it the night sense. And especially like this level is the interior, but you still get the night light. So it was pretty difficult for me to do the lighting at first.
I know we've changed lighting models.
3 times?
3 times.
Right.
So each time you got to learn the new tricks of the new lights and then
Right.
change all those out.
Right. That was kind of difficult at first, learning through the new lighting system. But it really helped the visual since we have the shadow. Most of the game doesn't have the shadow system, so shadow turns to just the black. They cannot make it to the colors, and thanks to our programmers that made it happen.
When you collect the key on this level or any of the other levels, you'll notice that the background kind of completely goes dark, and we kind of go into this letterbox and show you this animation of Sly in the key, and it's kind of funny. We use this alternate lighting model to darken everything else at this very base level. It was a weird kind of just hack feature I put in to just darken everything. But then you have to say, well, I don't want to darken Sly because he's the one collecting the key. So Sly is actually marked as like, don't darken me, but he's the only thing in the whole game that's marked that way. Oh, and the key is marked as don't darken me. But everything else in the game gets darkened by this alternate lighting model when you collect your keys.
You may be saying this level is large, but it is actually a third of the size of the original level.
The original concept behind the original NPCs was to tie them to Alice in Wonderland.
What was challenging in lighting this level, Okio? You have fire in here, you have multi-levels.
You have lasers. Yep.
Okay, the hardest thing for this level was you have 2 different kind of setup mood. One is very cold. You start with cold, and at the end you get hot. So we have we can only use one fog in this level, with actually for every level. So choosing the right color of the fog was very difficult to stay kind of same. I mean,
Keep it consistent with the other level.
right.
Was having that progression from cool to warm from the very start.
Wasn't there an octopus, or was that in a long time ago?
That was in a long time ago for this
With
level.
the tentacles were there behind
It was behind.
We were
the
very
door.
sad when it was removed.
Yeah.
It was quite
the.
large.
It's a sad day.
It was a huge octopus head, and you got to knock its eyeballs out of its sockets and knock its teeth out of its
And its eyes
head.
looked at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty creepy, wasn't it?
And he had a bow tie. Our NPCs were all kind of formal, wearing formal wear. After doing the crankshaft level, we decided that it would be impossible to finish this game with levels that are that size. So we decided we were kind of in this mode where, okay, that was a regular big level, and we'll also do these smaller levels that are kind of bonusy. And we wanted to do one that was just pretty much all secure, as much security as I could put in. So this is going to be a small security level, and it ended up being actually pretty
Good, it's good, great size.
a good size. For security in the game, we decided to go with a kind of one free hit per system, I guess you could say, where they're kind of in sensor mode. They're yellow, and they don't actually cause damage to you if you trigger it, but it sets off the alarm and changes them to a damage, this kind of red damaging state. And we primarily did that, for inexperienced players to give them an extra chance to get through, instead of just hurting them every time. And also because we like the idea of you running around while the alarms are blaring, and it's loud, it's a little disorienting. It's something, if it immediately burned you, a lot of people would probably, die then and wouldn't get that experience of running around while the alarms are blaring. So we thought that was a good thing. So we switched to the kind of one free hit, I guess, per system.
We were under really tight constraints, the challenges of creating this environment. We one of our best traits is that we have a great way of communicating. So between the designer, modeler, and texturers, we made sure that whatever we were creating could get done in the time we had available. We really adjusted when we had to. We adjusted things in the model to work for gameplay. And then also before I did my final handoff, I really talked to the texture artist because he had like a limited amount of time and said, hey, this is what I did. You know, and I really tried to model it toward him being able to texture it in a fast period of time and also look great. So it was really great. We really talked about, and we learned a lot about our game designer process through this. After this, Rob started doing almost all the elevation final, doing any turns, adding any elevation changes, and so it really helped the whole process along the way.
And this is also I think our last level that had split collision versus like what you see on screen versus what you like, kind of the physics that you're running around on. So this really was
A transition.
a transition from how we did levels, and it was I think it really helped us get in a position where we could finish the game.
Yeah, it's totally true. We can do stuff fast, yeah.
This level began with just the kind of mechanic of this wheel that you can interact with by running on it. And it's kind of one of the few more puzzly kind of elements in the game where it's you know, when you walk up to this thing, it's not completely straightforward what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it's not immediately obvious what that wheel is used for.
So, you know, getting, in both these cases, it's, you know, driving, you know, running on it drives the animation of another, something else in the scene, whether it's the hooks or the conveyor belts.
Right.
And I don't know, I know you've done some rigging here.
Yeah, I actually had done the rigging on both of the wheels, and so that was a little bit challenging from the perspective of the conveyors. You know, the conveyors that we've got in the back wall there with regard to the getting the textures to actually go with the speed of the conveyors. That was the challenging part of rigging this, was doing that work. But most of the rigging just was driving the animation, changing the speed of the animation of the hooks going around, or changing the particles and the steam coming out of the whistle. Right, and that's what the extent of the rigging was.
The hot coals that roll down on the floor, it's something that I've stuck to my guns on this. A lot of people have not liked the hot coals because
I think they're great.
Because it's kind of this random thing. It's not something that's totally easy to predict, even though the floor has been modeled with kind of these dips to really, you know, they pretty much, they're real physics, but they're going down a pretty similar path just because of the shape of the floor.
There's kind of a valley there that takes it right down to the grating and then back around again.
We're kind of actually moving, when the coal gets to the bottom of the shaft, we just move it to the top where it comes out of to respawn it. So it's kind of like a transporter or something like that. And at one time, instead of the clues, we had these bags of loot that they would roll on the ground. And it was funny when you would break like a safe open and this bag of loot would come out and it would roll down this hill because it's designed for this coal to roll down, and then it would fall down the chute and then the money would come out of the chute where the coal's coming from. So it kind of revealed exactly how we were doing this.
Yeah. I can imagine a player seeing the loot going down and going, oh no, I just lost it. And then looking at the chute and there it is popping out.
So this started off as a puzzle where you were going to come to the end of this boat deck, and actually the top of the boat deck where the first starfish throwing NPC now is, was going to be the training section. And the idea was going to be that there was going to be invisible lasers all over this area, and you were going to have to spray something into the ahead of you to expose the beams, either smoke or frost or something in front of you. And so it was actually laid out very rectangularly, and there were all these things to jump on, these floating platforms to jump on, and you had to kind of, each time you did a jump, you had to kind of look around you for the invisible lasers and then make your next jump. And as we backed away from the puzzly, slower gameplay, that was the first idea that went away. Yeah. So then what came?
Well, there was also the idea of once you got to the rear set of the buoys that floated on the water, that there was a giant fish that was sitting below you.
Oh yeah, the giant fish.
And he was the one that paced you and made you want to move forward faster and get through the level, or otherwise he'd come up and gobble you up.
Yeah, so the giant fish, he got cut. Giant fish got cut.
We definitely learned a thing or two about physics engines in games. How the predictability of something animated over relying on the physics engine to work itself out is usually...
Yeah, the physics engine tends to work well in really clean, isolated situations, or in shrapnel, or in other situations where you want good-looking sort of ambient animation, but not as good for stuff that has to work 100% of the time, super predictably. And then I think environmentally, I think this was one of our first levels that really had a good kind of, I don't know, misty, really rich kind of textured feel to it. You know, the fire on the side, which you can see from outside, and the approach even.
All the like the moss hanging off of everything, and just kind of...
Yeah, a lot of really kind of organic richness in this level, especially back, you know, when there was fish and all that stuff. The water's, you know, being space warped and, you know, has some interesting stuff going on, and, you know, all the surface effects that the texture artists put in, all really, I think, made this a really good looking level, and one that we kept investing in because it was something that, you know, the surroundings were so appealing that we wanted to make sure we used it in a really constructive way.
The wisps floating through the air and whatnot, but with the fire in the background, brought out a great richness in the environment. I remember when I first loaded it into the world after it had just gone through this massive change, and it was just one of the most spectacularly beautiful levels that we had at the time. That it was just exciting to go back and play through it.
So the second approach of the game, this was touched by a lot of people too.
Yeah, originally it was a huge junkyard that you were navigating through.
Yeah.
It was really confusing for the player to know where they needed to go and what was a wall and what wasn't, because everything was equally interesting.
Right.
As it was just piles and piles of trash.
Like some breakables, but some not. And it was really sort of dissatisfying to play.
And then it sort of morphed into this mesa thing, primarily to define space that you could and could not walk on. As the player would progress in towards Mesa City, you get more of that kind of abandoned, desolate, not so much junkyard feeling, but ghost town vibe.
Definitely.
As you went from no man-made structures, and then you find a shack, and then you get to like a house, and then a building, and then multiple buildings, and then this sort of subway terminal.
Right.
All of which are progressively denser and denser kind of urban images.
So in this level you've got, the stick guy, you got the dog, the leash dog.
Oh yeah, there's 4 actually that I did in this level. There's the stick guy, there's the card thrower, there's the bulldog on the leash, and there's the jailbird dog.
What do you call you have kind of pet names for all the NPCs?
Yeah, I have names for him because I hate calling him stick guy and stuff. So.
You don't like stick guy?
I don't like stick guy. I'd rather call him Gorgeous Lou.
Gorgeous Lou?
Gorgeous Lou is the stick guy. The card thrower is Inkspot Jackson. Dalmatian, obviously. The bulldog I never had a name for. Because I think the bulldog was actually... I didn't do the bulldog. I just helped on the animation, but I didn't design. But, and then Polly Shackles is the jailbird dog.
He has the best idol of any NPC in the game. Trying to gnaw through his chain.
That's pretty good.
Ball and chain.
Very on theme.
Very much.
It's always cool when the NPC is showing you what he's going to be doing to you through his idol. So you get a sense what his weapon will be. Those are always more successful. Both those guys do it pretty well. Oh, this level features maybe the coolest security setup of them all, where you have that kind of checkerboard on the floor with the floor sensors and the sweeping lasers. And it looks like you're a goner. There's no way in the world anyone could ever get through this. And you can totally get through it, but the thing is, because the security devices have to sense you before they become dangerous, you can practically run through the whole thing and live for it. You know, live, but you'll be fine. But it looks just overwhelmingly tough. And I mean, in a lot of ways, that was our goal in the whole game, was to give the perception of crazy difficulty and make it very doable, so that you got that feeling you had done something exceptional and that Sly was a really exceptional thief. This is the only level in Mugshot's world that actually is a casino. And originally, when we had set off to make Mugshot's world, it was all going to be casino. We just sort of weren't that interested in doing a whole casino world after doing one.
So we had to find lots of stuff around it. That's why we have buildings outside of it and the rooftop on top of it.
Well, it was just more interesting going through the urban environment. This is the only level in Mugshot's world that actually is a casino. And originally, when we had set off to make Mugshot's world, it was all going to be casino. We just sort of weren't that interested in doing a whole casino world after doing one.
So we had to find lots of stuff around it. That's why we have buildings outside of it and the rooftop on top of it.
Well, it was just more interesting going through the urban environment than it was kind of making your way through these slot machines and dodging the gangster dogs.
Kind of like real Vegas, where it's interesting for the first time you see it, and for a little while, and then after a while you kind of get numbed.
But it's based on real casinos that have a lot of water and swinging, sparking cables. That
Yeah.
you've seen, real casinos you've been to, over in Tulalip.
No, in fact, it's not. It's not. This level features a couple game mechanics that we use all over the place, but in here it's pretty pronounced, and that's when you get up on top of chandeliers and you're looking down on a guard, where the whole point is to get the drop on your opponent, jump down and smack them in the head with your cane. I think this was the first place we did it, and we use it all over the game, but there's some pretty clear examples in here. And oddly enough, even though you're many, many feet away from your opponent and you can go anywhere, whenever we see people playing, they instinctually bash people in the backs of their heads from above, so it seems to be pretty core to human behavior. Another very core Sly Cooper kind of gameplay concept is what we call M+1, an M standing for mechanic. So when you're playing the second half of this level and you're jumping on those spinning roulette wheels, you'll notice that the first set you're on, they're not dangerous at all. And that's just to teach you sort of what it's like to be on these wheels that have little partitions and they're moving. And then the second one you get to has dangerous tabs in them. So you have to kind of watch out where you're jumping. That's M+1. The +1 is the dangerous tabs. Then you get to the third set of wheels and you're at M+1+2. And the 2 is the laser beams, which you can't cross. So you need to get between the wheels fast. And then you get to the fourth set of wheels, and the wheels are going in the opposite direction. If you sit and you play this game, or the second half, and you really look at how the difficulty is ratcheted up one wheel at a time, it's crazy clear that that's how we try and increase the tension in the gameplay, but not overwhelming the player off the bat with complexity, because you're taught each little mechanic along the way.
This level started with just experimenting with the field of view of the camera. This kind of, it's a lot more extreme and more kind of fish-eyed lens than any other level in the game. And once that was in, it was like, well, this is very much like Vertigo, you know, you get this feeling of vertigo from being high and seeing the ground below you. So that's when I tried to make the design be like this, you know, the sides of the building or a skyscraper as they're going up.
Yeah, and we ended up
motivate them.
Yeah, we ended up doing it on the inside, kind of the hotel, sort of in a kind of an atrium or a courtyard in theory. We invented these bouncers. This was actually the first place in the game that we had used, in this case an awning, but anything that would bounce sly upwards, and really started to tune and play with that gameplay about, you know, how high should they each bounce and what's the right amount to give the player control while he's in the air. And really the combination, I think, of the unique camera angles and a huge amount of bouncing on things and jumping up and down on things really kind of defines the concept for this level. It presents some good challenges. Once it sort of took on this retro feel, kind of playing like a 2D side scroller. Our producers at Sony even, you know, kind of took us to task once or twice about how retro that felt. But the retro feel also had a big impact on the kinds of NPCs we could use in this level.
Oh, definitely.
Because you needed an NPC that could work well in a really confined space. And in fact, the original design for the ball and chain NPC had him swinging the ball in the wrong hand for this level, and we had to change him so that he would be comfortable with his right side up against walls. From a secondary standpoint, I thought that the introduction of the air conditioners was a good idea because it was this sort of skill element that required you to pay attention. And
Right. It was one of the few really leftover in terms of mechanics from some early designs for the game, where there are these things called break falls, where you would, you know, it was like the air conditioners where each one you hit, it would fall away. So it was very much the environment's kind of getting destroyed and your choices are getting limited as you're going. So you have to do it, you know, pretty much do it right the first time.
yeah, the stealth sections, these were some of the earlier sections to use the duck and to use cameras fairly heavily. I thought pretty successfully in this case. You know, you get some different looks that you see elsewhere in the game. And the last section in the bedrooms, sort of the bouncers go up through the ceilings, which was kind of a fun change. Gave us some real sense of three-dimensionality as you kind of pass through the floors. That was a fun change. And then the big finish, the precarious big finish, where you have to sneak out onto the sign. I don't know, all in all, a pretty successful level.
I did the kind of layout design for this world using Legos, and it actually turned out pretty close to what I did. I knew it was going to be a rooftop, so having being kind of constrained by the general blockiness of Legos seemed like it was fine. And it helped me get the elevations worked out, and I found it easier than doing it on paper because of all the, it's going to be done in 3D anyway. So if you're throwing it together with Legos, you can get, kind of hold up to your face and look at it from all these different angles and try and imagine what shots you're going to have in it. So I think it was the only level I did with Legos, but I think it helped a lot.
Compositionally, the level was really fun to work on. It was, once he had the letters done and we knew the elevation, then I went in and even from the very first shot, you'll see that nothing overlaps each other. So the level doesn't feel like extremely super full, but it doesn't feel like it's all a bunch of clutter. And dealing with the NPCs, they were really fun. We had a lot of designs and thought about different ideas that would really relate to the idea of dogs playing poker. That was the theme.
Yeah.
The main theme behind it. So you'll see like the dog throwing cards and having his idols being card tricks, and the slobbering dog, the junkyard dog, which started in a whole different design with the bobbing head, and it being one of our most complex characters with blend shapes and really great idol of like chomping on a bone. And then at the top, or actually the lower levels, you'll see we call it dog with stick, which is totally a play on the thiefy dog sneaking around and how the idea of this big, cumbersome guy being able to walk so agile with the big stick. And then also the final one, which is you see up in the top level, which is we call him Paulie Shackles. And that's a jailbird, and he originally was a woman with a purse, and we found it too offensive, so we had to redesign. We're like, what are we gonna do? We have to redesign with the same gameplay mechanics, and we came up with different ideas, like maybe be an Elvis impersonator with a microphone, but the whole idea of the thin string was too hard for a player to see, and the microphone really wasn't that big of an object. And then luckily Travis came up with the idea that it'd be great for it to be a jailbird, him throwing his ball and chain, and it ended up being a really strong element. It's, you know, with the big ball at the end and a thick chain, it's really fair for a player to jump it and also know when it's dangerous. So it ended up being a real win-win.
A lot of the other game design stuff that's in this world besides the sign came out of brainstorming sessions with the people who were going to be like people like Suzanne and Karen and Dev, who were going to be directly involved in how this level was going to get fleshed out. So like the cars with the clues on them that drop away when you come off of them, I think that was Dev's idea, and having the sign, like the big bone that crashes through the wall and everything like that. So it was one of our better, very collaborative efforts.
Definitely.
I started working on this pretty much the day after I saw the movie, and I was pretty interested in the funky rooftop scenes they had in that film and the landscape created by those rooftops. This was the first level that we made that featured the Inspector Carmelita Fox, and it was a real challenge figuring out the gameplay mode for her, because we wanted to have this cop character in the game that sort of made more concrete the fact that you were a thief and that chased you, but at the same time we didn't want to do a chase situation similar to the games where there was somebody behind you and you were running down screen.
Yeah, we wanted to have something where it didn't involve as much memorization, where it involved a fair amount of reactionary stuff rather than having to memorize the environment. Yeah, this was a particularly challenging level to get sort of cameras done correctly as well as behavior, because we had to focus on two different characters at once, and we had to deal with it from pretty strange camera angles. There's a lot of change, so this was definitely a test for doing the camera angles.
It's weird for the cameras in particular because Carmelita needs to be on screen, Sly needs to be on screen, Carmelita's shock missiles need to be on screen, as well as all the areas that Sly needs to jump to or climb on need to be on screen. So you have all these requirements, and at the same time, you don't want to have the camera bonking into like chimneys or pipes or what have you. So if you look at how all the rooftops are laid out, the tallest elements will be at the point on the roof farthest away from the area in which the camera travels, and that's totally on purpose so that you won't be occluding your vision of Carmelita or where you need to go.
Yeah, in this one it's more sort of the upper left corner of each building. So what inspired Carmelita?
Carmelita is a composite of two characters. Well, the first thing, right, is that we just wanted to have somebody saying, hey, Sly, you're a thief, because otherwise, you're not really making off with a lot of money here. You're stealing a lot of keys and you're stealing back your Thievius Raccoonus from other thieves. So unless we had a law enforcer telling you explicitly you are breaking the law, it didn't really seem like you were breaking the law, which you are. Anyhow, Carmelita is the product of really wanting to combine two characters. One is this inspector character from the series, Zen, who's a detective that hounds you, and it's pretty standard, right? It's sort of like Javert and Jean Valjean. A lot of these, works of fiction that are about a criminal character have this tireless cop that hounds them all the time and their relationship. And the second character that we were pretty overtly riffing on was this federal marshal and a bank robber, and they fall in love, but they can't be in love because they're on opposite sides of the law. So Sly and Carmelita, they have that thing kind of going on where she is both his true nemesis and love interest at the same time.
I'm gonna hunt you down, Cooper. You can't run forever.
I like the smart guard a lot.
The who?
I like the rodent, the big voodoo rat.
For everyone who can't see Andrew, he's a dead ringer for the voodoo rodent.
It's a startling resemblance. I was scared when I first met Andrew. I actually hit him with a stick repeatedly. And I will again right now.
Ow. The voodoo rodent was one of the few in this world where I could actually sort of act out what I wanted him to do to any extent and so he's the most humanoid, I guess.
You act out all of your characters?
I act out, yeah. I find that I think I was saying this in one of the other levels, but I find that and I make this mistake over and over again of thinking, oh, I know what this guy needs to do, and I just start animating and looking at it from the outside, and I find if I don't actually do the action myself and sort of feel what it feels like in the body and you know, make sure that the posture and the gestures all kind of feel right internally, then it's much more of a struggle to animate it. People say especially that the walk for this guy looks like something I would do. I don't think I really walk like that, but I did do that a lot during the week that I was animating him. And
You call them smart guards.
yeah, the smart guards are that's kind of our internal sort of word for any of the guards that are the flashlight bearing guards that you really want to stay away from, and if they catch you, it's pretty much doomsday. So they're kind of an element of gameplay to really emphasize stealth and convince you that it's not okay just to randomly run through the world bashing things.
They're actually called smart because you can't evade them, or at least not easily without taking damage. So that every time you dealt with them, you had to be sneaky.
I think some of the repeatedly used pieces were really effective in this, like the way the huts, you have this sense that you're in this big village, and it's a few sort of simple pieces, you know, repeated and decorated with some smaller sort of elements around them, and I don't know, when you're down in and amongst them, it feels like it feels like a rich environment. It feels like you're in this, you know, little village of stone teepees.
It doesn't look like the same hut over and over again. They each look like they're their own individual hut. When I saw this game for the first time, after already having done the voices, I hadn't seen it when I did the voices, and I just had all these lines. Here is the actual visualization of everything that I had read in the script.
One of the things that's sort of interesting about this level, it's the first one that actually has a big shot to open the level. As we were developing the product, this was the first game level
that we built and had that, yeah.
Yeah, so that there's a really low camera looking up at the gate to try and give the sense that you know, there was something very large inside, and to kind of be imposing, like the gate in the original King Kong movie.
Right.
When they get off the boat, there were all these natives who are sort of fearing the other side of the gate. We're trying to get that vibe across with this initial shot. Also, one of the sort of the design goals for the level was to focus on Sly's rail run move. So there are a lot of branches that you can jump on, and feeling pretty ninja-like as you can move on these surfaces that a normal person can't. So Sly, being upgraded to the point of near master thief, is able to traverse the treetops in this very cool kind of anime way.
Yeah, I always thought it was really cool how he moved sort of between using his hook and his feet, and doing regular landings and sliding and running uphill. It just feels like he covers a lot of different sort of modes and the way you move through it. And I remember, actually, before we had the control scheme worked out, you had to use different buttons to land with your feet and grab with your hook, and it would just explode your mind to try and play this level because you're trying to run away from this giant snake and still remember to hit the, you know, circle for this and the square for that, or whatever it was. But I just remember it being very sort of exhausting to play in its original control scheme.
Yeah, you really had to memorize the buttons.
How about the modeling on the trees? What were some of the challenges you faced?
Actually, going over poly budget was the biggest challenge, I think, because they're such cool, scary shapes. You know, we wanted to get out of that, and to get the kind of gnarled branches that we wanted. It was easy to go over poly budget, and there's so many of them. That just added up to be kind of a nightmare. We had to go back in and redo some of the modeling and kind of limit our use of the trees, but it turned out looking pretty good, I think.
Did you have to go through any kind of special rigmarole to make sure that the true gameplay path was clean? But I mean, because there are a lot of kind of side branches that don't look playable, yet they exist in the world.
Yeah, I pretty much went through the game tree by tree and placed each branch with a reason. I didn't just go in and just start
Do every branch.
Every branch
Wow.
has a reason.
Well, that's
I mean, you can see it.
every branch that's in the gameplay zone, right? Because I mean, there's those
Yeah.
top branches that you can never get to.
Right, the top branches aren't too bad, but some of the branches sticking out of the side of the trunk are separate models,
Yeah.
and I put them in there only for visual reasons and to get them out of the way, you know, if they were in the way of gameplay.
The whole waterfalls of soup with the hands and the bones in it are very much inspired by the scene where they're going into get the room or whatever. There you see this big cauldron of soup that has hands and all this gory stuff in it, and I was like, well, it's nice as in a pot, but as a waterfall, I would like that
Boy,
very much.
that really grosses me out. Made me happy. Yeah, actually, yeah, we all like.
I just thought that was your thing. I didn't realize
The
there was
grosser
an
it is, the
inspiration.
happier
Yes.
Karen you are, the grosser it is.
Yes.
More chunks and bits and nibbins,
The more-
ribbons and gristle,
The juicier it is.
the better.
Yeah, originally we were experimenting with how to the very first one had the floor and the ceiling were two separate objects, and the walls were skinned between them. So when the floor, you would jump on the floor and the floor would move around and the whole walls would stretch and distort. But
Like being on a tongue.
being on a tongue that's pulling on
Like
the
a
cheek or something,
trampoline.
right?
Yeah.
The floor was like a trampoline, and then the entryways would stretch and distort, so the actual doorways would get smaller and bigger. And
Right.
it's kind of a clever idea.
Getting fitting the number of smart guards in this level that we wanted was pretty difficult because these were probably the most ambitious smart guards in terms of just the number of animated pieces they had was, I think, more than we tried to put in one before, and so we ended up having to do all this clever stuff to get them all in there and get them animating like we wanted.
Really, there's the difference between the initial texture pass in a level and when Karen has time to go in and put all these light cobwebs and all this really nice
Atmospheric sort of stuff.
atmospheric texture buddies and just texture kind of accessories in the world. It really makes a ton of difference. And this world really feels like it got a decent pass like that.
Yeah.
I think we really wanted this level, even the NPCs. We wanted to kind of make it a little bit more scary, and push that angle a little bit more. It's still stylized and has this animated feel, but we wanted it to be, the glowing eyes. I think Hokyo did a great job of kind of integrating all the NPCs by giving them all the same sort of glowing eyes. Yeah. And
Real consistency.
exactly.
Gomerville's inspired when we were modeling, it was the first one for Voodoo, so it was really supposed to decide the style of architecture and land. And we spent a lot of time on the trees because we realized it was 1/3 of the whole level.
And I worked on the maps inspired by Kay Nielsen's paintings for, specifically the 12 Dancing Princesses, old fairy tale from, I think, around the turn of the century. Kay Nielsen was also the person that inspired the scene in Fantasia with the real droopy trees, and it's got a real cathedral-like scene as the people are all moving through the trees with the candles. And it adds to the mysteriousness of this level.
The kind of original game mechanic for this level was just having NPCs that aren't just, you walk up and you hit them and you kill them. They're NPCs that are getting generated from something. You have to fight them down to get to their source and then take out their source. So that's where it started. And luckily, since we're in Voodoo, having them be ghosts makes a lot more sense than a lot of other NPCs. So once Andrew got in and did the modeling and animation of Travis's design for that round ghost, it really took off, because just having the fingers going while he's kind of chasing after you. I love the ghosts in this level.
Yeah, and a lot of the great camera angles you see is not by the modeler, it's all by the game designer. And so it's really great to have, we really put a focus on getting great cameras from the get-go, and then I'll go in and compose, but it's really nice. We really lock them off and let me work with what the camera is, so we don't change any gameplay, and we just enhance the experience more by just sculpting.
Also, I think in the inspiration of a lot of the art style, I think Dev and Travis gathered a lot of research from all kinds of tribal original peoples' architecture and props, and the lanterns and the gourds and the ropes and the bones, and it's pretty much all organic, based on what you would have if you were living without a mill to mill your lumber with. And keeping it all organic is part of the fun of this one.
Yeah, we decided to make, instead of making the moss a buddy or having it be just a bitmap, we decided to model it and just make it puffy, which made it very toony.
This level is in many ways, in my opinion, the most sort of evolved from the standpoint of gameplay mechanics in the game. We do some really crazy things with the camera, like when you're sneaking around the edge and the icicles are falling at you, where we've constrained the player to a simple decision-making process, being left or right with the danger coming down on them. But because they're so constrained, you can do totally whack things with the camera and give you this image that you don't normally see in video games as a result. It's more cinematic, and it helps highlight the danger, in the case of this level, from the guards looking down on you when you sneak around the guard tower or the falling icicles. It's a nice change of pace from just having the top-down playable camera all the time.
You get a bizarre perspective.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so we were recording the voices for the game.
Yes.
And how weird is it to get the script? And the game it's kind of interesting to note that we are not trying to make a cartoon with the voices. Everybody's supposed to be pretty straight-laced. And you're one of the weirder voices in the game with your blah, blah, blah. But a lot of people are very, very dry, not hammy at all.
Sly Cooper.
Sly Cooper,
Very
if
dry.
he was hammy, we would be in big trouble. But he takes it all seriously. How hard is it to take it seriously or even understand what's going on from the script?
Well, I would say it's actually pretty simple. The idea is that you get a character and you figure out what this character sounds like and what who they are and what they want, without sounding too ridiculous. This is what it is. And you just say the lines like the character would say them. And fortunately, the lines are not too difficult to manage. A lot of them are, wow, press the circle button and you'll jump. And so it's pretty self-explanatory what you need to say, what you need to do. When you get into the crazier stuff about, I think on this other level about, she's making a disgusting soup out of guts and bones. It's just a matter of just going along with the lines and trying to be scared.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you, I don't think you can really use like Stanislavski method when you're trying to picture yourself as a turtle freaked out by a voodoo creation soup.
Well, it's all just the magic of make-believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, well, you say these lines too if you're writing them or reading them yourself. You say them and you know exactly what you're trying to get across. And the job of the actor, and I use that term loosely in my regard, is just to try and make sure that everything makes sense that's coming out of your mouth.
This level was started mostly just like the kind of the opening shot where you're coming out of the cave and you really see this big temple. It was pretty early in the design of the level where I wanted to kind of have this kind of picturesque moment here, and also being able to see your end goal from the entrance as well. This is one of the more, I guess we call it pretzeled levels, where the course is very much kind of going around itself. It's kind of using this one art space for the different game mechanics. So instead of having a long corridor that has all the mechanics and we have to do art all the way down that corridor or whatever, we take it in one space. In this case, we go outside the temple, we go inside the temple, and then we go across, and you're still able to see the temple when you finish the game, and it's kind of, you're looking down on it. So it's really trying to reuse the art assets by staying in the same space as you're going through the level. This is another one of our earlier uses where we're going to a more extreme camera angle for dramatic effect when you're going into the temple and you have the snow falling away down the cliffs as you go, just for about added drama. And we know exactly what you're going to be doing because the gameplay is constrained to that curve that's kind of hugging the cliff wall here. So we know it's safe to take the camera up into a more extreme position than the typical gameplay camera.
I love, in general, the kind of circuitous route through this whole level. The fact that you get through one area and then slide down to another and then sidle over across cliff face over to another, and etc. There's kind of an interesting route through the whole level. I like the firework platforms too. Those were a great idea.
I think this was the first use of this use of lasers where it's really close. It's just close to the ground. It's not like sweeping across the whole hallway. It's creating this, this dynamically changing play area that when you first come up to it, it's like, oh, it's fairly intimidating because you see the glow on the ground. You see it's like this, it's constantly changing. But they're actually pretty easy to play. So it's kind of making things, for more inexperienced players, having them see a moment where it looks very dangerous and them getting through it successfully is something that it's good because it gives them a sense of accomplishment. So that's the reason why it's just kind of this cool thing. It's actually fairly easy to play through. And once this one was put in the game, there's several other areas where we decided that we could use this and change the speeds and change the sweep patterns to give it a different feel. And it's really, just make it faster makes the difficulty harder. So you can definitely dial it up to be challenging. But in this case, it was set up for one of the earlier levels, so it's pretty straightforward actually.
So Andrew, you modeled out this level?
Yes, another level that you designed.
What do you like about this world?
Let's see.
Or level, I should say.
What do I like about it? I like, there's something great about the space. There, the fact that it's taking place, very quickly inside and then outside of these tall, narrow buildings, and that they form both the kind of foreground, sometimes the surroundings, and then actually the background, kind of the sideshow, the thing that you're looking at in the distance. So you're constantly seeing places that you've been before in the level from a distance, from a different vantage point, and I think that gives you this sense of continuous world more than some of the other ones maybe.
That was definitely a goal with a lot of these snow levels, was to give you that inside-outside feeling.
Right.
And this level starts with something that we thought was going to be really difficult for players, which was you get up to this door and it's locked and there's no way to open it. And there are two open windows that you can go in, and it's pretty easy to overcome. This level was actually made before the Paris level, but we had to test it and have people experience the frustration not being able to get through the door to know if it was gonna be okay or if it was gonna be too aggravating to include in the game. But that is a seriously simple mechanic that seems to reflect sort of breaking and entering.
Right.
And the whole level is like that. You're going in, you're going out, you're on top of roofs.
Always entering through windows, doors.
This level has a really bizarro laser grid on the floor.
Right.
And it's bizarro because there isn't a discernible pattern to how you're supposed to go through it.
Right.
You look at it and you think, okay, if I study this long enough, I'll see that I need to go left, left, right, left.
Right.
But really, there's none of that. You can stare at it for 45 minutes and you won't see the same thing again because it's all just slightly out of cadence with each other.
Yeah.
So you have to, right off, you just have to make it up as you go along.
And once you get into the middle of it, it's pretty, there's, if you're really paying attention, there's enough time to adjust to what's going on, but it's great because you've got everything out of phase enough that it feels very almost random. One thing about this level too, this is maybe one of the cases where we learned a little bit about not having the level designers model out quite as much of the actual terrain or the walls and things like that. So the buildings initially in this were fairly tightly modeled, and the gameplay was fairly tightly constrained to the buildings, and they were initially fairly straight, like a lot of the stuff is that we get after we've after level design has been through it. And so making it kind of funky and unusual was a little bit of a challenge, and eventually required us to go back in and change a little bit of the way the spaces were laid out and everything. But I think it ultimately worked out really well. But it was a challenging level because you've got gameplay both on the inside and the outside of these buildings. So the wall is very, in a lot of places we've got room to just push back the wall in places here and there, and in this one it was very tight and brought up its own unique challenges that I think a lot of the other ones didn't have.
I kind of used the fireworks in this level as kind of gating mechanisms to keep you kind of dodging and running from Carmelita while you're playing.
Right.
And also just to have bigger, kind of these big events during the game.
Just from texturing, I know, like on the mugshot where she's shooting at you, the colors were reversed of this. Like in this one, Sly Cooper's path is all cool, and where Carmelita's jumping around is where we kept the warm colors. But in the mugshot one, it's kind of reversed, where Sly's running on the warm path and she's jumping on the cool buildings.
Yeah, doing her effect was kind of funny. She originally had a different, entirely different weapon, and we really wanted to kind of emphasize this stun gun feel, and it was interesting to try and tune because the color tones of the world in general were, she appears in several places, and so it was finding something that had a little bit of, it has this icy color, but also this sort of orange center to it, and that seemed to work best across the different levels.
So was it your idea always to have it? Do you have other ideas besides that dragon, or was it?
After I changed from the Buddha one, it was. I think Devin was the one that mentioned trying to see if we could do a dragon for it, and then which was good because for a Chinese dragon, you have that great shape that you could fold. I was able to fold it and shape it how I needed it for where she's going to stand on and stuff like that. And then you put in all the legs and everything like that.
Yeah, so they're, we're trying to think of places on the dragon, on the high and low points of the humps of the dragon, and then also there are these kind of freestanding poles in the abyss of the mist that you can see down there. That just having her stand in as many different places as possible made her feel really like she was sort of part of the world, but always just out of reach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big thing. You have to keep her on screen.
Right.
Keep her large enough to see her, and at the same time make it seem like you could never get to her.
Right.
So the
you're not tempted
closest
to leap off the path to your death or something like that.
One of the first drafts I did of it had a giant panda Buddha statue laying on his side where she was jumping on. It just wasn't the same. So I'm glad we went with the golden dragon.
Never got to see that one.
I tried to keep it away from people. It wasn't very good.
Watch your back, Cooper. When you least expect it,